call this meeting to order. It's the Subcommittee on Telecommunications, and we have one bill on the agenda today. It's a hearing for House Bill 520, and I think I'm being told we have a quorum. So with that, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope everybody can hear me all right. The proverbial words, it's a simple bill. I'm not going to say that, but it's a simple bill. Just to give some context to everyone, in end of last year and then in December, the FCC awarded SpaceX, which does satellite rural broadband, $885 million for federal subsidies. Just to give that context, that was 1/10 of the federal government subsidies for rural broadband out of $9 billion. So one company got 10% of it, and the other 90% was spread amongst 179 companies. Just to highlight the importance of satellite to the FCC. Obviously, that doesn't apply directly to us, but just I want to give context. Moral story is we're seeing emerging technology that's growing very rapidly, and obviously we can't predict that. The Senate Bill 402, which we all know passed in 2017, it laid the groundwork for what has now been massive expansion in rural broadband for Georgia. That gave a lot of it was called the Achieving Connectivity Everywhere Act. There was one portion of the bill which we're trying to, the objective of this bill is to continue to allow for now and in the future to make sure that the Georgia Broadband Authority has every option available to them. And so what we're doing is the definition of broadband service, striking the word terrestrial. If you look at line 10 of our bill, it's the entirety of the bill, which is striking the word terrestrial as a requirement in the definition of broadband service. So we do not vision, having talked to the board members, having talked to the authority, the lobbyists, the telecoms we don't envision that having an immediate impact on the way the rural broadband dollars are being spent in Georgia, but it does give them the option at a future date if they do choose to change the direction that they go. It gives them that option. So unless you have any questions, Mr. Chairman, that's everything.
Okay, thank you for that. First question is that you? Representative Mumham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Singleton, for bringing the bill. I want to kind of blow the hinges off this thing and really open it wide up. I think it's worth discussing. I think there's an idea in our state and in our nation when we define and describe broadband service. And I totally understand what the author is trying to do here. And I think in furtherance of that, and this is part just of a broad discussion, this may not be as pointed of a question as may need to be pointed. But when we talk about a wireless service, and I want to disconnect from my Wi-Fi here. I'm going to go to speed test, which I have installed on my phone, and on a 5G network, and I hit go here, and this is on Verizon Wireless. My latency is 21 milliseconds. I'm getting about 80 megabit down. My jitter 6 milliseconds. When we talk about moving from a terrestrial to a non-terrestrial service, those factors are going to be extremely important. Why is that? Because latency, when we're dealing with things that are live, is extremely important to be able to interact with maybe somebody who's on the other end of the telehealth session, somebody who is on the other end of a Zoom call, someone who's on the other end of whatever system. If I'm doing some type of remote operation, and now they have remote tech support where you can actually hold the tablet out, put your hand out in front of it and do all that kind of magic. But it's important that we have both low latency. And so I think if we're going to strike terrestrial, right, the conversation becomes, well, how much latency should be allowed under, right, the code section when we're defining this. And so, I would posit that we should probably change even further than that. Is 3 megabit going to be good enough to be able to upload information at 1080 or an appropriate resolution to a doctor? More than likely not. Depends on the encryption, right? Packet encryption and how they can compress it before it's sent. I would just posit that there's several things here that need to be changed to make a terrestrial or non-terrestrial argument. One of those being speed of the connection, both, synchronous 25 up, 25 down.
Mhm.
I also think that you probably need to put some type of limitation, maybe on the upwards of 20 milliseconds or 30 milliseconds in ping, right? Or latency. That way, we're not dealing with these issues. I mean, almost everyone in South Georgia, okay, is going to qualify and get a satellite HughesNet type service. The problem with that service, right, isn't whether or not I can get 25 megabit. The problem with the service is whether or not I can actually do anything with that 25 megabit other than stream movies. And so I just want to posit that to the committee as we have this discussion, that we may need to broaden the scope here and change more than just the terrestrial, or rather, if we're going to strike terrestrial, then we really have to put some boundaries, because there's a lot of non-terrestrial services that shouldn't qualify if what we're trying to do is deliver quality bandwidth to Georgians.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So, Representative brings some valid points. I mean, it's interesting that that latency is not even in there to begin with, which I think is an interesting factor, as like he's mentioning, upload download. It's good that that's quantified, but latency is not. Latency matters a lot for video games and other applications, some business applications. So it is interesting. I will just highlight this bill is designed to be more permissive and not more prescriptive. Whereas if we go into the latency requirements, the upload download requirements, then we're being very prescriptive in nature. So my objective was to give the Georgia First Authority and the Georgia Broadband Commission more options. Now I will highlight that by taking terrestrial out of here, it doesn't change any of the requirements that them as a commission are using to vet their sources. So all of the requirements that they have established on their own, when we allow them to create their established organization, they have a whole laundry list of requirements that are much greater than our generic definition of broadband. However, we are oddly prescriptive in that we're requiring it to be terrestrial, which gets rid of about half the market. So the intent with this bill, and Mr. Chairman, at your discretion, I mean, my recommendation would be to keep this bill permissive in nature. And if we did want to do something like Martin is talking about in the future, going and maybe updating the latency or the upload download requirements, I think we could do that. But I would say that if we do that, that does make this it makes this a much more detailed discussion than just giving them more options. The intent was not to limit their options, but in the future to give them a more permissive environment that they can make their own rules within to execute their plan.
Okay. Any other questions from those joining us? Okay, we don't have any. Any public comment from any people here? We did not have a sign up, or we do have a sign up sheet? Okay, we don't have any signups. Well, this was a hearing only, and I think the point of it is to start the conversation, because this is an interesting thing, and this committee deals with a lot of things as technology changes, things that nobody really thought of before. So appreciate you bringing the bill and starting that conversation. I would ask any interested parties to please come and speak to me about it. I'd like to get, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and probably get with you and Representative Monahan and moving forward. So with that, since there's no more comment, again, if you have an interest in this bill, please come and find me. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, members.